Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today's video is going to be a palettes revisited video where I go back to some older palettes and ask myself the question whether I still like these as much when I first tried them. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. Today's video is going to be an overview of 5 eyeshadow palettes that I tried again this month to really determine, okay, do I still like these as much as I think I do? Very often we try eyeshadow palettes for the first time and then they end up in a drawer, especially if you're someone like me who really tries a lot of new out there palettes. It can be difficult to go back to palettes that you love. And I wanted to do this series to be able to go back to the palettes that I love and adore and to chat to you about them again, because I think this is just lovely. I think loads of us actually go back to palettes all the time. It's just that when you're on YouTube, it can get a little bit difficult, and I like then having videos ideas to challenge myself to actually do it, because sometimes these are like intentions and then I don't end up doing it. You know how it goes? At least that's how it goes for me sometimes. So yeah, let's get to these 5 palettes, but before we do that, it may be good to know who I am and what I like doing on this channel. Hi, my name is Maaike. I live in the Netherlands. I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, and I've been reviewing makeup for more than a decade. I love eyeshadow palettes, Esses and Catrice, and getting the use out of my makeup. So if that sounds interesting to you, then I hope you'd like to consider subscribing. So the 5 palettes that I have here for you today are all things that I've dubbed favorites at some point in time. Some of these made it like top of the list last year, or in like my favorite neutral palettes or whatever it was. And one of these is also on my eyes today. I went with a very moody sort of fall, a little bit of Halloween inspired perhaps as well. I went very heavy on the berries. So if you know what 5 palettes I had selected for this month, then you know exactly which palette I will be talking about when it comes to the eye look. I will save it for last. But all of the looks I did with these palettes in the past couple of days, I did take pictures of, so I will be inserting those as I'm chatting about these, because sometimes whenever I try a palette when it's new to me, I make a point of using every single shade in the palette, but then when I go back to them, I don't have that urge to try every single shade, and I can just put the look together the way I'd like to, so, and sort of focus on my favorite shade. So the first palette is the smallest one here, and this was completely inspired by Lorraine. She is a regular in my comments, and she was saying how she really likes the Viseart Cashmerie for the fall time. Now, I love the Cashmerie palette. It is one of my all-time favorite neutral eyeshadow palettes, and that is how I have always listed it, but I had never really clocked it as perfect for the fall time. But I think that if you focus on the more brown tones that it has here, it can indeed be very fall, like perfect for the fall time. One thing I love about this palette, and one of the reasons why I still love this palette till this day, is that you can very easily mix and match any of the shades that are in here. Yes, it has warm tones. Yes, it has cool tones. Yes, it has some berries. Yes, it has some true actual neutrals, but nothing is pushing it so far into one particular direction that nothing goes together anymore. This is a palette with removable pans, so you could alter this color story if you so wish. I've kept mine the way it is because I feel that the layout is really helpful with putting looks together. I mean, you could stick to the warm tones that you have here, or the berries that are here, or the cool tones that are more down here, or the neutrals that are up here, and you will get a look every time. But I've said this many times before. You can go like full-on neutral with these 6 shades. You can make it a little bit more plum heavy with these 6 shades, but you can also think of these as quads. You can go with these in duos. You can very easily mix and match, like you can even identify like little trios in here. So whatever look you do, it's always going to work out. For the look that I did, I ended up, of course, using one of my favorite shades, which is this taupey number. The only thing I wish, like this has been my gripe with this palette all the time, is that this shade, this creamy yellow, would have been like a taupe transition shade. Then I would have liked it even better. But I understand why this shade is in here, because I love using it. For instance, taking this brown and then using this creamy yellow on the edge to really buff it out. I just really, really love that. So this was a very successful look with me. It very much reaffirmed why I love the Viseart Cashmerie so much. I do believe this one is still available, but a lot of these like these style palettes seem to have been discontinued. Like they still have a couple, but the Viseart Violette Étendue, which is another one of my favorites, I can no longer find on their website. So I think that's gone, but the Cashmerie should still be available. Because we all know I love a palette when it's discontinued. The Catrice Fall in Colors, case in point, this was limited edition last fall and I raved this into the ground. I even put it in a giveaway at the time because I ended up loving this thing so much. It's quite possibly one of the best eyeshadow palettes Catrice has ever released. Now it has very gold reflective packaging, which kind of skews what these shades look like, and it makes it look a lot more warm toned than it actually is. The only true warm tones that we get are these ones. Other than that, it's got a lot of like berry and taupe leaning shades. So really, when push comes to shove, I think this is a perfect fall tone palette. It's got all the neutrals that you could possibly want with a pop of something like bright orange. My favorite shade in the palette is this silver taupe lilac kind of shade. Like, I feel like a lot of shades in this palette have like a purpley plum undertone, which is why when I put this on my lids, it looks silver at first, but depending on how the light hits it, I can see a little bit of this purple quality coming through, making it more interesting than a straight up silver would be, which is why I like it so much. So it just has a little bit more to it. I believe I started the look off with this one, and then I popped this one all over the lid, of course. I put this one, like these two shades along the bottom. This one as liner, it goes deep enough for that as well. And then this shade was on the lower lash line, and this one in the inner corner, I believe. Very successful. This very much reminds me of Huda Beauty eyeshadow quality, but it's by Catrice, and it was only 15 euros at my local drugstore. This was very difficult to find even at the time. It wasn't really available online, it seemed. It was like an in-store only kind of thing. And I was very randomly shopping in my local drugstore, spotted this, tried it, loved it, saw that they still have some left, and then I popped an extra one in the giveaway. But yeah, this is very much discontinued. You will no longer be able to find this. For a while there, I could find it still on some like European websites that still had some leftover stock, but by now it is definitely gone. But I'm so happy I got my hands on this one, and trying it again has again reaffirmed it for me. I love this palette still till this day. A palette that I don't dislike this palette, but I can now see why I just have other things in my collection that have dethroned the next palette that I'm about to show you, and it's the Lorac Pro 3. This made it to my top favorite neutrals list year after year after year. I love this palette to pieces. This was released at a time when warm tones were all the rage, so this didn't do very well in terms of like getting hype. The two previous palettes from Lorac were much more successful for the brand, but those were like a true cool tone palette and a true warm tone palette, even though the cool tone one had lots of different colors in it, which made me always question whether it was actually cool toned. But the Lorac Pro 3 palette was the first neutral palette that made me realize what I need in a neutral tone palette. A lot of the palettes that were raved about at the time were things like the Too Faced Chocolate Bar and the Naked, like the original Naked palette from Urban Decay. And while those were good palettes and I had them and I enjoyed them, I always felt that no matter what shades I put together, everything always ended up looking the same on me. And this palette made me realize what I was missing in those palettes. They were just too dark. I have fair skin, and very often if you have a lighter skin tone, if shades are too dark, they all start looking the same. I think the same thing will happen if you have a deeper skin tone and you start using something this light, everything is going to look ashy. I just know it will. And I think that that's why this palette did not get the hype that a lot of Lorac palettes had before it. It had a different formula in Medallion, which a lot of people didn't like. I love that shade. I always use it with a finger and it's absolutely fine. I have dents in this. Like, look at my dent in Rose Bronze. This is the shade I go to all the time. Whenever I use this palette, I dab it all over the lid. Clay is my perfect crease shade. The dark browns and like the blackish tones are great as liners. The browns are soft enough that I can actually use them to deepen up a look without it looking too crazy. Like if I just want like soft, neutral looks that you see everybody doing, then this was much better for me than any of the hyped up palettes at the time, because everything just turned into like a smoky eye on me. Not a good look if that's not what you want to go for. Light pewter in here is really great as well, but now that I've used this again, I'm just like, I like you, but it's no longer at the top of the game for me personally. Will I still be using this? Is this a palette I really rate highly? Is this gonna be decluttered? No, but I do think I'm gonna be putting it in a makeup memories box next time I do declutter my makeup collection, because as much as I love it and as much as this palette taught me so much about the kind of makeup I like doing on myself, I just feel that I now have neutral palettes that just have a little bit more oomph about them. This just has shimmers and mattes. The shimmers are all very satin leaning. I like a little bit of metallic. I like a topper. I like something with a duochrome, which is why I really prefer the Gloss Gods new neutrals by now. I have so many great neutral tone palettes that this by now is just a little bit old. It's getting a little bit up there in age as well. So will I keep it around for memory purposes? For sure, but it's not something that I really rate as highly as I used to. And I think I feel similarly about the next palette, but I still like this. I just think that this kind of color story, it's not necessarily for me. That granted, I did stick to the more warm tone things that this palette has to offer when I created the look. So that could skew my preference right now, but I'm talking about the Blanc Fusion from Zoeva. So I have a bunch of these older, by now discontinued palettes from Zoeva, and I've been putting one in like every single one of these videos in the past couple of months because I really want to go through them again, because these are some of my favorite older style palettes. The brand did away with all of them, and they are now redoing their entire makeup line, it seems, to go vegan and more sustainable. I've always loved the chocolate bar palettes from Zoeva because they just offered something differently. And the Blanc Fusion was great because it has all these matte neutrals down the bottom and then a full row of shimmers. The white is actually a duochrome. We have this really strong yellow thing here. And what I ended up doing, if I remember correctly, like I used a more warm tone neutral in the crease, and then I use the bronzy shade all over the lid. So that could be why I'm not like, maybe it is a little bit too warm tone for my liking. But then we also get like almost like mauve leading shades in here. So I've always dubbed this as like the naked honey for fair skin tones, and I stand by that. I still think the formula in this is outstanding. The shimmers are great. These have a more of a metallic finish than the Lorac ones, which is why I like this a little bit better. The neutrals in here are great. The mattes perform really well. I love how that white has that golden flip. It just makes it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more unique in terms of what you could do with this palette. I just think that by now, I'm just over color stories like this on myself. Do I like it? Does it look okay? For sure, but it's just not something I prefer wearing on the daily, like I did, for instance, with the On Taupe when I went back to that. I absolutely fell in love all over again, and I know I have a couple more cooler toned eyeshadow palettes in this lineup as well that I think I like better. This is not going anywhere. I'm not going to break up this collection. Even if I were to ever decide to get rid of these Zoeva palettes, they would end up in a makeup memories box because these were just really good eyeshadow palettes, and I would definitely be willing to hang on to them for the rest of my life, even if they expire and I can no longer use them. But yeah, lovely little palette, but the color story is not necessarily my jam. And then we get to the final palette that I used, and that's what's on my eyes today, the Lime Crime Venus XL. And I wanted to use this because I love berry tones on me in the fall time. I do have to say that with a look like this is why I don't prefer a warm tone on myself. Can I get away with it? For sure, I can wear this, but it drains me. It makes me look extra pale. So if I want to like bring my inner goth out, then I should wear warm tones rather than grays and blacks that goths usually prefer to wear. Nothing wrong with that. I think this, I can still wear this. I can get away with this for sure. It works fine. But since I'm already so pale, any chance I get to make myself look a little bit more lively, and my makeup helping that way, I just prefer, and I just feel my face comes to life more when I wear actual cool tones. I just feel that when I wear warm tones like I'm doing right now, and like deeper tones like this, I can get away with it for sure. It's not offensive at all. I could wear this out and nobody would think like, "Ooh, what are you wearing?" Of course, I did also amp it up with the deeper lipstick. I just wanted to go all out for this look, but I just feel that it just kind of drains me a little bit. So yes, I can get away with it. It's okay, but it's not perfect. And sometimes I just don't want that. But yeah, I think it worked really well. The way this palette performs is still great. I don't understand why no longer anybody talks about these from Lime Crime. I think you can still buy it from their official website. I started off with this really nice pinky tone in the crease and all the way up to my brow. I blended it out with the softer pink here. And then I did a bit of a halo eye, which is something I haven't done in a while. I was like, oh, I'm feeling fancy. Let me try it. It's my day off, so I can do that. So I use this shade here and then the shade right above it. And then I use a little bit of ethereal, yes, in the center to have a little bit more oomph there, and I also use that in the inner corner. Use this shade a little bit to deepen things up, to add a little bit more depth to that shimmer shade, and then I use that shade on the lower lash line along with this more pinky number. So I went pretty pink heavy and berry heavy with some of the warm tones, and I think this look, I aced it. I'm very, very happy with how it came out. And if you think that in the close-up my brows look different, I went to see my brow lady yesterday, so she cleaned up my brows and now they are looking a little bit sharper again. And it's a lot easier to do eye makeup again, which I like. But the last time I went, my brows ended up a little bit too thin, so I had to grow them out completely before I could go in again. But yeah, Lime Crime Venus XL. If you want a berry look, like if Modern Renaissance, the berries are your favorite part, which was always my thing, and you want something that has all those berry tones but amp it up a notch, then this palette is still a good one. It was a little bit powdery, there was a lot of kick up in some of the mattes, but I tap off my brush all the time anyway, so for me that's not a problem at all. I really liked it. I enjoy still having this in my makeup collection. It's not something I will wear all the time necessarily, and I love pulling in some of those brighter shades if I want to wear this palette in like the spring summer season. So this is one of those palettes that can see you through all the seasons, because you can go really deep and sultry and smoky with it, but you can also go more vibrant because it has those brighter pinks and oranges as well. So I think it's a very versatile palette, and nobody is giving this enough loving. So that's it for me for today. Those were the 5 palettes I wanted to go back to. Very successful, if I have to say so myself. The only one that I think is going to end up no longer being used is the Lorac Pro 3 and possibly the Zoeva. But as I mentioned, I'm not willing to break up my Zoeva collection yet, and there are too many of the original collection that I still have that I haven't tried yet in a video like this, or that I just know I love and adore. So that palette is not going anywhere anytime soon, but it's not my ultimate favorite. But yeah, I think that I had a very successful month trying eyeshadow palettes. Like the new eyeshadow palettes I tried were pretty much all bang on, and then this roundup was really good as well. So October was great for me when it comes to eyeshadow. So super chuffed with that. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed watching today's video. Thumbs it up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and then I hope to see you in my next video. Bye-bye!